Hi there, this is David Noor. I want to thank you for joining this webinar on my next book called Cocreate. I'm delighted you're here. A couple quick housekeeping notes. Number one, I'm digitally recording this session, and we'll make the recording available to you. If you've attended any of my previous sessions, you know that I'm a content speaker. I'm going to cover a lot of ground. Number two, if you have any questions or comments as I share some of this content, by all means, please use the question section on the right-hand side of your screen, and I will pause periodically to check those and make sure I address those. So if you're also active on social, my handle is just @DavidNoor, and I'm using the hashtag CoCreateBook as a good way for us you're welcome to share these insights with your relationships, and as a great bucket for me to come back to and see if you have questions or comments or things that ideas that particularly resonate with you. You're going to love this personal story. I have a former CEO named Bruce. We've not only stayed in touch, but he's become a good friend, and now he's a professional ghostwriter, and we talk on a regular basis. And he said, David, I watched your last webinar, and you spent 10 minutes just getting to the point. So you're going to love this. Here we go. There you go. There's my background. Thanks for coming. For those of you who may not be familiar with my work, I've spent the last 2 decades focused on this notion of relationship economics, quantifiable, strategic, intentional, and specifically to fuel enterprise growth, not only individual and team-based, but really enterprise growth. I was blessed to be able to deliver 62 global speaking engagements last year, company meetings, association meetings, panels, do a lot of consulting work. I'm also doing a lot of more executive coaching work, and I'm elated that Cocreate is actually my 10th book since 2008. I have a young family. I have teenage kids. I love my crazy dogs. I'm active in scouting, and I ride motorcycles for fun. So I wanted to just get that brief bio or background out of the way. So these, I'm a big believer of practicing what I preach, which is add value to your relationships, and those who get it will seek you out. Those who get it will act on your ideas, your perspectives. So it's not one session, it's not a 5-minute overview. I've created a webinar series. Last week, if you missed it, we covered an introduction to Cocreate. If you didn't, not a big deal. I'll share the premise with you. And by the way, we also post all the recordings on the webinar page. This week, I'm going to talk about this idea of introspection. Hopefully, you'll come back next Thursday. We're going to talk about this idea of adaptive innovation. I'm going to go deeper mid-April into strategic relationships. We're going to talk a lot about customer experiences. I'm going to talk to you about leading through provocation. I found that to be a particularly useful way to get key folks together around the room. Let's see. We're going to talk about in early May this idea of the spiral of growth. How do we co-create upwards? We're going to talk a lot about exceptional experiences, and that's the Monday before the book is published, and the official pub date by St. Martin's Press is May 9th. Let me again quickly pause. Kieran is yeah, so we will definitely give you a recording. He's asking about the recording, and I will share that with you on where and how to get those. There, by the way, you can get to them if you just go to the cocreatebook.com. Middle towards the bottom of the page, there's a link to access the webinar series. They're all on a single page, and you can find them there. In terms of today's agenda, I want to quickly reinforce or reiterate the Cocreate premise. I'm going to dive right into this idea of introspection, and then I want to share with you kind of the practical, pragmatic, hopefully, applications of some of these ideas. But like any good presenter, you want to try to get to know your audience a little bit. So I've actually created a quick poll, and I'm going to launch a poll and would love your responses very quickly. So how often do you actually make quality or dedicated time for introspection? Daily? Say once a week? Once a month? Or who's got time for that, right? So if you could just take a quick second, I love it. So we've got about 30% of you voted. I want to make sure your vote counts. So do you, and again, not just in between emails, but do you make time for quality introspection, right? Daily, once a week, once a month, or who's got time for that? We got about 70% of you. We need a few more. It's okay. It's a lot more fun if you play along. So a couple more seconds. Great. We're up to about 80%. Going once. Want to make sure your vote gets counted. Again, daily, once a week, once a month, or who's got time for it. Going twice. All right. So I'm going to now, let's see if I can get to my, there we go. Close the poll. Let me show you the results. Yeah, it's not unusual. Some people make daily. Hey, good on you, right? Some people usually try to make it at least once a week. A lot of us, some of us, once a month, and unfortunately about 14 or so percent who's got time for that. And I can't reiterate how important this topic is and how critical, as I'm about to show you, I believe it is to your success. So I often start writing books, and again, this is book number 10, with a single question. And this one was, if I was your biggest competition, how would I disrupt you? How would I disrupt your organization? How would I disrupt the way you go to market? And Matt Ballantyne inspired me to kind of think through the different types of quote-unquote innovation that we all see out there. Like a lot of individuals, a lot of companies are very good at what I actually call iteration. They kind of do the same thing a little bit better. Here's a better process, here's a better product, here's a better service, here's something better, right? Few do innovation really well, which is to come up with new things. Disruption is when new things make the old obsolete. Disruption is really helping you think differently, and that's where it really comes from. And unfortunately, it's often by a competitor you haven't seen or you haven't thought of that completely disrupts your business. And I'm trying to tell you, you continuing to do things better isn't going to suffice. So if you think about this idea of how will you compete, if you continue to do the same thing you've always been done, I'm just not convinced you're going to remain relevant. If you compete for the moment with a new clever offering or more of the same, you'll be momentary, but I'm not sure that's lasting. Only when you think about how will I compete in the future is how you're going to remain relevant. And the last session I also talked about any client in almost any industry is always at the middle of this figure 8, which is they're evaluating, right? They discover they have a need, they consider different options, they come back to evaluation, they buy, they use, they come back to evaluation again. In that process, the brand you develop, the value proposition that they perceive you to bring, and how you fit in their lives, in their journey, is what develops their customer experience. And only when they've had a positive experience with you, and you've seen this, that's when they choose to share that. That's when they, one buyer, B2B or B2C, tells other prospective buyers, hey, had this problem, found this company, here's what they were able to do for me. Had this problem, found this app or found this website or found this tool or bought this product and it solved my issues, right? So I don't think enough people, enough leaders, enough organizations really pay attention to the holistic view, not any one interaction, but really the more holistic view of the customer experience. So the premise is pretty straightforward. We're no longer the smartest person in the room. A mentor tells me if you are the smartest person in the room, sometimes you might be in the wrong room, right? The market is more demanding than ever. You're going to have to be more agile. You're going to have to be more nimble. Transparency is the norm, right? And really bringing a more unique approach, a unique perspective to the table. And by definition, every individual, every team, every organization has to evolve to remain relevant. So co-creation is really all about your evolution, your next growth cycle, the next version of you, your value add, your go-to-market through a fewer, more meaningful strategic relationships that demonstrate, not by what they say, but by what they do, a vested interest in your success, a vested interest in you. And again, everybody says, let's go get more customers and make bigger. That's fantastic. That's great. I've always believed a few strategic relationships can really help you think differently. And unfortunately, I don't know if this is happening to you or not, I'm meeting more and more executives who are so jaded by vendors. They're always used to dealing with vendors that they can't see a strategic relationship when they stumble upon one. an executive recently told me, thanks, we'll take that under consideration. And he wasn't an attorney, and we weren't talking about a legal matter. But that automated response says this guy is just used to dealing with one vendor after another. So I didn't push, and I don't push. And if you've become so jaded that you can't see strategic relationships that behave differently, that help you think differently, we got bigger issues that we can certainly talk about. And in studying relationships for the last 2 decades, what I figured out is the really astute ones, and I talk about them in my prequel to this, Relationship Economics book, ideally are doing mapping, the left-hand side, the blue box. In the middle is a lot of relating, nurturing, sustaining, requesting. Co-creation is really the red box on the right, which is all about capitalizing. How do I take few strategic relationships and really elevate them to a very different level? So 8 chapters in the book. Each, again, we'll cover through the webinar series, and this one obviously is about introspection, adaptive innovation. I'm going to talk next time about faint signals, prototypes, strategic relationships, what I mean by fewer, more meaningful, more real ones. How do you know? We're all a guest in our clients' and customers' journey, and by the way, that customer could also be an employee. It could be an internal customer. What does leading through provocation really mean? What does a spiral of growth look like? How do we consistently create, again, exceptional experiences? And then at the very end of the book, I talk a lot about, and I've actually created a canvas, and I'll show you an example of that. So jumping right into today's session, in terms of leading through provocation, again, many of you answered, we don't make enough time. If you look at introspection's definition of that self-analysis, self-examination, in essence, soul-searching, we don't make enough time to really think about our mental, our emotional process, and kind of what we're doing, how we're doing it, why are we doing it. Or something like this happens, right? And I don't know if you can read the cartoon or not. The guy's banging his head against the wall. I'm tired of beating my head against the stone wall. Time to work out another approach. Should I try to climb over it, navigate around it, walk away from it, study it for clues as to who and what I am? Get counseling, perhaps. Enough introspection. Let me keep banging my head against the wall. So if we make enough time, unfortunately, it doesn't lead to any kind of an action above and beyond what we've been doing. So we kind of keep going and doing the same things. You want proof? Think of the insanity in our lives, this daily email. How many emails do you get a day? Right? How often have you told yourself, this is crazy? Right? Yet how often 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock at night rolls around and you keep asking yourself, what did I get done today? That constant disruption to what we're doing. What if we turn the damn thing off? And we checked it a couple of times throughout the day. What? That might as well just be crazy talk. If you turn off email, just because email is instant doesn't mean I'm going to drop everything else I'm doing. I'm going to immediately respond back to you. But it takes discipline to say, you know what, I'm going to check it first thing in the morning, I'll check it midday, I'll check it lunchtime, early afternoon, and before I leave. And I promise you, they'll still be there, and the responses will still be there. The other thing I've found in really helping others think through an introspection is this notion of push. And by that I mean, if you think about it a second, we're all surrounded by push. Push marketing, push advertising, push management, push leadership, push strategy, push, 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 push. And the analogy I like to use is, have you ever tried pushing a rope? Yeah, it doesn't work. But people do it all the time, right? They kind of force themselves or force their ideas or force their approach onto others. So co-create is really all about pull. How do I create market gravity? How do I create this pull? If I plant enough seeds, not everybody, you cannot be everything to everybody, but those who matter will seek me out. Those who matter will think and want to know more and really think through how we could be an asset to each other. So organizations, again, made up of people and teams, right? In what I call the co-create economy, are doing 3 things very consistently. They're thinking about 3 things very consistently. First and foremost, this idea of an outcome-focused brand experience, and I'll explain each of these in a second. The second one is this idea of collaborative co-creation. Again, I'm going to show you some examples. And the last one is this idea of purposeful, provocative leadership. not just clever terms, but kind of a deeper meaning into what is really making some of these companies that are doing some of this that much more successful than the competitor peers, or certainly more successful in a piece of their business than the competitive peers. So let me again jump into this idea of adapting to disruption, and a good opportunity to pause and see Jacqueline Daly. Huron, there's a lot of perceptions which are coming from Outsourcing Institute, IPR, Robotics, and ASAP, Association of Strategic Alliances Professionals from Boston, US too. Yeah, and there's a lot of polls of us. These are the questions people are submitting. And again, I appreciate it. Make sure they're questions of kind of what pressures they see on a regular basis. So let me launch the second question, second poll question. And this one of you is, give me a second. Did I screw that one up? Give me 2 seconds. Let me see if I can, yeah, let's see. Save that. Give me 1 second. I want to try to launch this. Here we go. What type of, this is still, let's see if I can. Technology, right? Here we go. What type of disruption are you seeing most in your industry? So select one. Is it more increased nimble competitors? Are you seeing additional kind of government regulations? Are you seeing changing customer preferences? Wait a minute, I thought we knew them and the preference, the taste have changed. Are you seeing more available, cheaper alternatives? Or better experience by others? So again, think about the disruption that you're seeing in your market. What type of disruption are you seeing most in your particular industry? Increased nimble competition, government regulations, changing customer preferences, more available, cheaper alternatives. Really the only reason they're buying is the cheaper alternative, and better experience that others are creating. So again, I've got about half of you who voted. You want to make sure your vote gets counted. So a few more seconds. Again, think about your industry. What type of disruption are you seeing most in your industry? I'm about 60, 70% of you. A few more seconds. Going once. Want to make sure your vote gets counted. Going twice. Right? So, look at this. Wow, pretty close, right? Most people are seeing cheaper alternatives, which I can't disagree with more, right? Cheaper alternatives, if you get into price wars with people, it's a lose-lose. Very few people win in that scenario. Equally, between more nimble competitors, right, and changing customer preferences. I wonder if those have any correlation between them. A few more see government regulations, and then better experiences by others, right? So here's how I describe, and again, somebody has their hands up. Nat, I can't do anything about hands up. If you have a question, please use the question section, and I'm happy to address that. So here's what we're seeing, and let's see a question. William Brown, changing customer preferences, absolutely, right? Additional government regulations. Changing customers, there's a significant risk to companies. This is by Sid Fegan. And they're not addressing it, right? Sears, Kmart, Abercrombie, absolutely. A lot of those we're seeing. Nat is good now. Thanks. So here are some examples of the disruption. We see it all the time. And you remember that analogy of stop banging your head against the wall? So I'm always curious, how do people get around them? And do they realize they're there before they approach them? Right? I was having an interesting conversation with somebody about Waze, right? The mobile app Waze, and the joke we're having is never doubt Waze, because it's apparently this library of algorithms that, based on traffic and traffic flow, recommends different paths. And I don't know if this happened to you or not, but it will send me through this neighborhood, and I've lived in Atlanta since 1981, right? We're talking about 30-some odd years. And it sends me through a neighborhood I've never been through, and you're going in literally opposite direction of where I want to get to. And then you come out around apparently all this massive traffic jam or an accident, or right? So based on where you are and where you're going, it starts to predict and analyze and really think about alternative paths to get there. But the key is before you get there. If I'm sitting in the middle of a major highway and an accident happens, there's no off-ramp for me. I'm stuck. So critical to that adaptation to disruption is for you to really understand and see it early on as possible. There was a great article in the Chief Executive magazine, and the notion is disrupt your business or get disrupted. And that's a lot of what I talk about in the business is if you don't figure out how to identify those potential disruptions early and how to figure out ways around them, right? You're going to become, I was telling, I think I posted an image on Instagram or LinkedIn. I was at the LaGuardia Airport, and outside of the Sky Club, the Delta Sky Club, if you've been there, you look out, and there's the taxi cab parking lot, and it's the sea of taxi cabs that are just waiting. And somebody said they may wait an entire day for a single fare, right? They're sitting there waiting while the rest of us, or many of us, go outside and just catch Uber to where we're going. So if you don't disrupt your business, and we see this all around us, somebody else will disrupt your business for you. So I want to give you an example of that disruption. We worked with a client that does and in the book I go into pretty good detail about this. They do a really good job with their college campus recruiting. I met the head of global talent, and after he read relationship economics, he said, look, I think you can help us build a better relationship with our campus recruiting. And I said, okay, great. Tell me what you do now. Well, we go on campus and we do these information sessions, and we tell them all about us and our brand. And by the way, we participate in these career fairs where there's a big room and there's tables and kind of everybody comes and we talk about kind of what's happening, and people drop off resumes, and most of you have seen or heard that, right? And unfortunately, and again, they were doing some really good things. But as I got to know them and really peel back the onion, what I uncovered was we're doing a lot of pushing. Remember the push? Let me tell you how great we are. Let me tell you all the cool things that we do. Let me tell you about our history. Let me tell you about why you'd be awesome here. All that is a lot about us. So I said, what if we turn that push into a conversation? Because in the last 20 years in studying business relationships, I've uncovered that they start with great conversations. And those conversations build rapport and they build trust, and that's how great relationships are formed. So what if we branded? What if we focused? What if we went after this idea of a campus conversation? What if we put the students at the center of the journey? They were the heroes of the journey, of the story. We created an online community, and at each stage of the progression, right, we focused on what are their challenges, what are they trying to do, how are they trying to do it, and how do we help them think differently. And by the way, to be successful at that, we also have to think differently. So when we go on campus for information sessions, instead of a table, what if there were couches? And instead of just drop off your resume and come and sit and talk to us, what if we talk to them, hey, come and have a seat and give us a chance to get to know. Who's got time for that? Right? If you don't have time to nurture that relationship, again, we got bigger issues, right? So we created conversations. And by the way, what if we put ambassadors on those key campuses and they carried our flag and they said, hey, ask me about the campus conversation. And by the way, if you study individuals or individual students, you saw the stair step earlier, freshman year, they're basically trying to figure out where the dead people buildings are, right? In terms of a campus map, right? Where are my classes? Where do I need to be, right? How do I get from point A to point B? What if we created a trending 10 with a much lighter version of that campus, and we talked about the best places that people watch, best study spots, best sandwiches, best place for a date, best place to do an Instagram when your family and friends come to town, the best apartments, best place to work out. And we handed these out to these students on an ongoing basis. And if it was branded with our campus conversation, you would have a chance to really disrupt that whole experience of campus recruiting. This is now a mobile app. This is now really an opportunity to engage those students very differently. By the way, applications from that target audience is up in folds. And the program is thriving with that opportunity to think differently. So when we talk about outcome-focused brand experiences, I want you to think about this notion of a lemonade. Not how it's made and when is it made and the cost of it and the distribution of it and the supply chain of it and the delivery of it, but why people buy lemonade? What do they do with it? What's the outcome we're after? What is that experience we're trying to build? Oh man, this is great lemonade. I want to get more of this. So are you worried about the left, which is often input, or are you focused on the outcome? And in the book, I really delineate the two a great deal. Think about, and again, another quick analogy in this scenario for you is, I ask people, a lot of times executives, tell me how that client is better off because they're in a relationship with you. And inevitably, everybody jumps in with, let me tell you how great we are. And I politely have to at some point stop them and say, hold on a second, that's not what I asked. What I'm asking you is, how is that relationship better off because they're in a relationship with you? So what I'm really asking about is the outcome of the relationship, not the input, not what you do and how you do it. And unfortunately, a lot of people kind of forget that. If you happen to join us late, we are in the first chapter of Relationship Economics, and I'm going to pause a quick session for, let's see, questions. Mark Travis, never doubt ways. Absolutely right. Perry, are we supposed to be seeing something other than blank slide with adapt to disruption? I hope the screens if it hasn't changed, the screens, you haven't seen anything? Oh my goodness. Yeah, I should check that more often. No slides. Sorry, guys. All right. So, Sid, how often is lack of change due to we've done it this way forever? Absolutely. And unfortunately, innovation, it really does scare a lot of people. And as again, we'll talk about provocative leadership. It's not for everybody. And that's the other thing a lot of people try to force, is really forcing this on them, and that's just not for everybody. So, and, also in the book I talk about, and you may have heard me talk about this idea of listen louder. And listening louder, and again, I'm coming from this from a foundation of relationships, right? Listening louder, or listening period, isn't you being quiet long enough to figure out what you're going to say after the person's done talking. Listening louder, particularly in organizations, is about how do we make better decisions with more accurate data. And in subsequent chapters, I talk about leading drivers, not lagging indicators. And one of the things that I learned about years ago that I actually am a fan of, believe it or not, is the Net Promoter System. And again, in the book I talk about it, and this is something that we've done at several clients now. And if you don't know anything about Net Promoter System, it's basically the ability to ask a simple question, very single question, based on your experience with us, would you recommend us, right? And the interesting part is, 0 through 6 is negative, 7 and 8 is actually neutrals, 9 and 10 are positives, or what they call promoters. And the score comes from percentage of promoters from percentage of detractors, right? They almost like cancel out the neutrals. Well, the number itself is great, but it doesn't tell you why something's happening. It doesn't give you a deeper insight into what's really happening. So what we're able to do with what we call sentiment analysis is actually go deeper into that individual score. And as you can see, not only business at risk, but what's my retention opportunity? And by analyzing individual customers that are at risk and their responses, right? You ask a certain number of questions or certain questions after they respond with their, how they feel about you. You can actually go deep, do a deeper dive around text. And I can find out in either a positive or negative way, how are we thought of? How are we mentioned? What do people think about us in terms of their experience with us? So this gives you more definitive, more accurate, more focused information to then act upon. And it's one example of just listening louder. The second area I want to focus on is this collaborative co-creation, right? And again, not intended to be clever, intended to help you think, because there's no shortage of people who want to collaborate, right? And I've always said, collaboration for sake of collaboration is a waste of time. collaboration to make the end result stronger is priceless. So collaborative co-creation, and again, these are sample illustrations from the book, is really moving individuals and teams and organizations from just this notion of, well, think outside the box because of limitations of individuals or capabilities or teams, to how do we partner? How do we work? How do we really bring into the fold others with specialized skill sets, with specialized set of expertise to dramatically help us think differently about that box? So years ago, I had a chance to meet a company that specialized in high-valued medical equipment, right? Literally think about a hospital, how many gurneys they buy, how many mobile MRI machines or mobile. And again, these are pretty expensive medical equipment that they own. And what was fascinating about this company called Vixia is what they did is they put RFID tags, right? Passive and active RFID tags that not only tracked where those high-value devices were, but here's the aha moment: the path in which they traveled. Why would that be relevant? Capacity planning. We only have so many of these medical devices. They're pretty expensive. We can't have one in every room. We can't have even some on every floor. So if we understood the path that they went down, could we streamline which patients get access to which device? That was an example of not a hospital's ability to think about that, but that's why they brought this other company, who, by the way, their background was supply chain and supply chain dynamics. So collaborative co-creation is really about thinking about that challenge. They're framing that challenge, framing that opportunity, and becoming dramatically stronger, right? Look at the box on the right. Look at all that it's capable of, all that it can do, than even your own perceived reach today. You want an example? What's the most recognizable, one of the most recognizable brands in the world? Yeah, Coca-Cola. Here in Atlanta, they've launched something called Coca-Cola Founders. And again, I talk about this extensively in the book. And it's basically a new model for innovation. And the premise is, what if we got a group of we build this network of co-founders, we combine their expertise, we combine their experience, we combined what they're trying to do with, in essence, the power of the Coca-Cola brand, right? The resources that we have access to, the reach that we have access to, and by the way, the relationships we have, right? This is where relationships are strategic, they are quantifiable, and imagine how much further along those founders are with that Coca-Cola portfolio of relationships to create now a portfolio of really cool, really interesting technologies. Now, a very logical question would be, why would Coke be interested in curated video search or mobile network operator for millennials or on-demand meals or on-demand staffing? Every one of these, if you dig a little deeper, dramatically make the Coca-Cola company stronger. Every one of these is disrupting a piece of Coke's current business. Every one of these, through this founders network, is now allowing Coke to disrupt its own business before somebody else does. It's more than just participating or putting up an innovation center because it's cool and jazzy and sexy. It's more than just quote-unquote partnering. It really is opening up some of your biggest assets. Remember from the last slide? Our reach, our relationships, into our network, into bringing some of these folks to the table and really proving their key concepts. The last one I want to touch on is this purposeful, provocative leadership. How many of you know who this guy is? Yeah, some of you may recognize him. His name is Kevin Plank. And this guy is the CEO of Under Armour. And I heard him speak at a conference a couple years ago. And fascinating story, right? This guy played football at the University of Maryland. And the genesis of the story is he hated the way cotton, you always wore T-shirts, cotton T-shirts underneath the big pads, and they were smelly and they didn't dry out. And so his original idea was a moisture-wicking kind of T-shirt. And what's fascinating is if you know anything about the Under Armour brand, I mean, enormous growth. You see some of the chart on the right-hand side. What you may not know is in the last several years, Kevin and company have invested almost $1 billion in 3 different technology companies. And his fundamental premise is beyond companies that don't use data to make decisions, to make ideally predictive, forward-thinking, forward-looking decisions, their days are numbered. And through these investments and understanding for a long time, they thought about creating their own wearables and integrating wearable technology into their clothing. But by acquisitions, what he's done is he's gained 3 separate acquisitions. He's up to about 150, almost 200 million active users of digital fitness data. And to battle, they're not abandoning, and that's what provocative leadership is really all about. I don't want to abandon, obviously, bulk of our business, focus of our business, what we're known for. They're still in not only T-shirts, but they've gone into all kinds of activewear and sportswear and shoes, and they do all this other stuff, right? He's grown it into a $4 billion company. But he even attests to the insights from those 200 million users about when they exercise, how they exercise, where do they go to exercise, what do they use before, during, and after their exercise routines. All are giving Under Armour incredible insights to then act upon, to then really drive their product development, to really drive their brand activation, to really drive their go-to-market, and fundamentally how to effectively compete with the behemoth that's Nike. And what he's doing, again, imagine going to senior leadership, imagine going to his board and saying, I want to spend $1 billion acquiring technology companies. But he realizes the evolution of Under Armour, the future of Under Armour isn't in just cool fabrics. It's also in predictive analytics and really understanding the behaviors of its current and its future customers. What they need, when they need it, how they'll need it, how they'll use it, what benefit are they getting from using it, what are they not getting that uncovers net new opportunities for them, and really allows them to think very differently about the evolution of the Under Armour business. Purposeful, provocative leadership. The last thing I cover in this chapter, in this section of the book, again, this is chapter 1, and I believe in the next week or so, we're going to make the first chapter available to you as a download. So you're welcome to download, I think it's 60, 70 pages of the foreword, the introduction, and chapter 1. And you'll see me go into a lot more of this detail. The last thing I talk about here is contextual intelligence. Now, I heard this term years ago. It's been taught in our military schools for a long time, and I just got fascinated by it, right? So to break it down, simplest terms, it's really the practical application of what you know and the information you can gather in real time. Right? What do you know? What information can you gather? You combine situational awareness. What's happening around me? I want you again. I think of a SEAL Team 6. Think of a SEAL team member. What's happening around me? How do I apply intuition? How do I apply intuition? Here's my gut feel. Based on everything I know, it tells me, right? This is what I need to focus on. This is what I need to do. To really create, sense, and respond to what's happening. And ideally, in the business world, it's about trends. The funny thing about trends is like riding a horse, right? It's a lot easier if you ride it going in the same direction. Everybody sees it coming. Everybody wants to get on the bandwagon without really realizing what are the implications. And as Sid Fegan on this webinar will tell you, what are the risks? What are the risk implications you haven't thought of? So think of Internet of Things, and I talk about that in the book. Fascinating. Everybody wants to get on the bandwagon. What does it mean? What does it mean to you? Beyond the sexy, cool jazziness of Bitcoin in fintech, what will that mean for your business? How will that dramatically impact or potentially, think about how we started this webinar, disrupt your business? And the end result, or the so what of it, and those of you who know me know I ask a lot of so what questions, is to make more informed decisions. and effective action in, let me know if any of you are living in this world, varied, changing, uncertain conditions. What I'm here to tell you, if you don't take away anything else from this webinar, varied, changing, and uncertain conditions are not only going to continue to increase, but they're going to come at you at a more accelerated rate. Let me say it again. Not only varied, changing, and uncertain conditions going to increase, but they're going to come at you at a more accelerated rate. If you don't figure out another way to gather that knowledge, apply that knowledge, gather and soak in real-time information, real-world scenarios, not case studies and examples of what somebody did 100 years ago, and then apply those in what's happening around you in a much more nimble way, you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle to remain relevant. You're going to struggle to compete. So how do we do this? How do we apply it? We've all seen a lot of great ideas and complexity, and we hear interesting things, and we want to go back to work and do things exactly the same way. So in Cocreate, I want to make it practical. I've tried to make it pragmatic. End of each chapter ends with a description of a tool, and with the book, you also get a workbook, a PDF you can download. I also plan to print them and take them to clients. So end of chapter 1, the tool is a prioritization diagnostic. This goes a lot deeper, and I've done that continuously throughout the entire book. So I give you real practical, pragmatic, kind of usable ideas and insights. And when we share, beyond sharing some of these tools, when we talk about a case study, right? So here's a retail example. I try to tie those back to, you remember the figure 8 you saw earlier in my presentation? I try to tie it back into the presentation. Let me pause here a second. We've got a question, Sid. Yeah, how often is we talked about that? So Sid, you're right on point. Well done. I appreciate it. So the other thing that you'll start to see it towards the next few webinars is the idea of a canvas. And again, those of you who know me know I think better on my feet. I think better when there's a whiteboard or an easel. And for a client engagement, I drew this idea of a co-creation canvas, and you can see the 10 kind of key points in the bottom right corner. Well, again, I'm grateful to Lynn Wilson, who helped me bring a lot of those ideas to life. So not only have we created 3 phases, but now 10 unique steps towards a common mission, common vision, or common enemy, and this is what I use in facilitating Co-Create workshops. So the 4 operating principles I want you to think about is relationships are about empowerment, not hierarchy. The journey is one that you measure, and you look for constant ways to enhance the experience. You envision an evolution of your compelling value, and you're constantly trying to align and bridge silos inside and outside the organization. So I hope we can continue the conversation if you just go to cocreatebook.com, again, cocreatebook.com, you'll see halfway down the page a link to the webinar series. Again, I hope you'll continue to put these on they're all 3 Eastern, noon Pacific. So next one is next Thursday, April 6th. I actually will be in D.C., but I'll carve out some time to get together again. I'm going to talk a lot about this idea of adaptive innovation. You see the rest of the dates and the rest of the topics in front of you. I'm planning a launch party, a book launch party here in Atlanta. I hope you can join us first week in May. We're finalizing the details this week. We're creating a Co-Create video, something simple, something that we can put on the website. You can download, you can share in your discussions. I've created some individual and bulk bonuses and links to all kinds of articles, videos, and learning opportunities. So if you've gotten value out of this session, here's where I could use your help. May 9th is the pub date in commercial publishing. This is crazy. Some 3,000 business books are published every month, and most of them don't get out of the gate nearly as effectively. So we've partnered, again, on cocreatebook.com. We've partnered with some great folks, both on the single book as well as bulk. On individuals, I've created these bonuses, and again, as you buy the book, you upload the order number and you get access to these bonuses. On the bulk approach, it's a great way to bring teams in, and from our last webinars, several people were kind enough to reach out, and I'm now in conversations and helping them think differently about what they're trying to do. And the folks we've partnered with also allows us to customize these with book plates and logos and that kind of stuff. So what I've done is created, again, bonuses from a call with your executive team to a similar webinar customized for your team to a keynote. Again, I'll waive my fee for, again, getting the ideas out to a broader audience, half-day workshop, full-day workshop. And this will be up as a chart in the Cocreate book as well, or you can go back and see it through this session. So that's really what I wanted to share with you from this session. One of the, as I was thinking about kind of where I've been and what I've done since I began this idea, one of the coolest events is the Gartner Symposium. And I couldn't help but think how relevant this slide and this idea is. So individuals and teams and organizations that are desperately trying to innovate, those who are desperately need to innovate, unfortunately in many ways are bogged down with politics and the organizational culture that is not really conducive to collaboration, that is afraid of retribution, that doesn't accept ideas from outside. Co-create at its core, it's fundamentally about few strategic relationships that really help you think differently, that really help you reinvent yourself, evolve your unique value, and really continue to elevate yourself from commodities, just like looking like everybody else, to now specializing and to really elevating your value add to a very different level. Again, I hope this session has been useful to you. There's my contact information. If there's anything I can do to help you, by all means, please reach out. I hope, again, you'll come back. Next Thursday is April 6th, same time, 3 o'clock Eastern, noon Pacific. We're going to focus on adaptive innovation, and you can register for that session on cocreatebook.com. That's it for today's session. Thanks, everybody. All the best. Take care. Bye-bye.